What's up, guys? This is TPhilly coming back with another episode of the T Sheet. Coming at you solo this week. Gonna run through the Palmetto recap. Gonna look at and break down the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines. Go over outright cards for that. Talk about a little bit about one and done selections and go from there. Um, but first off, to start off with the Palmetto, can't not a ton to talk about really. I was actually at a bachelor party all weekend long. Went down to just outside of Annapolis, Maryland, played Renditions Golf Course, which is basically like a replica golf course where they take famous holes from around the world, combine it into one course. So they had a hole from Oakmont, had some from Carnoustie, had Amen Corner. They had 17th at Sawgrass, which shout out to me. I parred 17th at Sawgrass, had about 6 carts of guys just watching us tee off. Popped a little pitching wedge over, caught the front of the green, 2-putt, par, ho hum. There's actually a great seafood spot down there too called Mike's Crab House on River Road. So if you're ever down in Annapolis, definitely check it out. Good people down there. Um, but yeah, as far as the actual tournament, Hadley, I think we all know what happened. He blew it down the stretch, bogeyed the last 3 holes to lose the golf tournament. And what's funny is I actually would typically poke a little fun at him for that, but I suffered a similar feat this weekend. I was 5 over through 16, ended up going double double to shoot an 81 when all I had to do was bogey out to shoot a 79. First round of the year, so a 79 would have been really nice. But yeah, so me and Chasson Hadley suffered similar fates this week. As far as the actual golf tournament itself, was a small loser last week, lost about half unit. If you combine everything for outrights and top finishes, again, we didn't have any full tournament head-to-heads. This was kind of a weird tournament. Obviously, no course history here. It was the first time that the Congaree Golf Club had ever shown itself on tour. And the whole thesis behind my model for full tournament head-to-heads is accounting for a golfer's course history combined with his recent form. So whenever we get courses like this, we just take a week off. And what's actually interesting for the U.S. Open, we're not going to have full tournament outrights either, or full tournament head-to-heads either, just because, sure, Torrey Pines gets played every year. They just played a few months ago at the Farmers, but it's going to play a lot differently than it did at the Farmers, and we'll get into that. But as far as what we had, we scared the outrights a little bit with Johnny Vegas last week. Would have been nuts. I mean, there almost was a 7-man playoff for the win. We were actually in the car on the way back. I fell asleep for like a half hour. Whenever Hadley was up by 3 strokes and saw the Vegas only finished 1 back, I was like, what happened? Hadley went bogey, bogey, bogey to finish. But that's probably going to do it for the Palmetto. Like I said on the last episode, this was a spot start for the Palmetto. We'll go back to the RBC Canadian Open next year. Granted, everything with the border settles down and COVID allows the tour to head up to Canada. As far as the U.S. Open, we'll preview this a little bit. We have the Torrey Pines South course, San Diego, California, par 71. Usually plays as a par 72, for the municipal common people. But they converted a par 5 to a par 4 this year, so we'll play a par 71, 7,652 yards. Previous winners, the most notable you might remember is Tiger Woods back in 2008. Actually, the only other time that Torrey Pines hosted the U.S. Open, Tiger won on a shattered leg. Actually went, played all four days, went to a fifth, had to play against Rocco Mediate. That went 19 holes on a Monday. Had a memorable putt. And Tiger Woods won it on a broken leg. But the more recent previous winners, the last 6, I've doing a little bit of research, have actually all come from the USA. So makes sense. USA, US Open. We'll see if we can make that 7 in a row this year. But Bryson finished -6 at Winged Foot, won it. Excuse me, won it going away last year. Actually, it was the very first tournament of of this season. So -6 at Winged Foot, Gary Woodland the year before that, -13 at Pebble Beach. Brooks won over at Shinnecock the year before that. Brooks, the first half of his back-to-back at Erin Hills, finished -16. The year before that, Dustin -4 at Oakmont, and Jordan Spieth -5 at Chambers Bay. As far as golfers that are playing this course for the first time this week, most of this course, or most of this field has played this course before. I mean, like I said, most of the field played a few months back at the Farmers Insurance Open. But I am going to say that only 14 golfers have played this golf course. And that is because there's only 14 guys in the field that were also in the field in 2008. Like I said, this course is going to play a lot different. Like I said, they converted it to a par 71. The rough is going to be grown out, obviously, as we've seen with the U.S. Open. The USGA likes to make it pretty diabolical on the guys. So don't expect what we saw Patrick Reed do earlier this year. Finished, I believe he won it, -13, -14. We're not going to see that this week. So that's why I am not looking at too much course history when it comes to Torrey Pines, just because it's going to play as a completely different golf course. And if you see some of the interviews of the guys, that have already played a few practice rounds, they'll tell you that. I know Mark Leishman usually has some strong success at this golf course, and he came out and said, yeah, this is just, it's not the same course. So that's why I am not going to be, dabbling too much with any of my course history impacts on a golfer's number, and that's why I'm also going to leave alone full tournament head-to-heads, just because I guess I could look at it and kind of handicap it myself, but as far as from a strictly numbers standpoint, that's why we're going to leave those alone this week. So talking about the outright card, I think best place probably if we just start at the top of the outright board. If you are listening on the podcast, feel free to go over to the YouTube channel. I do have the SpoFi golf model pulled up, and can I not sort? I have it pulled up where you can see my outright win numbers. You can see the market win numbers, and it'll also show you the value between the two. So pulling it up, we'll start. Oh, goodness. So we'll start at the top of the board. We have Jon Rahm coming back from COVID. The last time we saw Jon Rahm was at the Memorial Championship, and he absolutely ran away with it. I mean, he was up 6 strokes before finishing up round 3 and being told that he had to withdraw from the tournament, test positive for COVID. I talked about this on the last episode, but he tapped into his 99th percentile of outcomes. Anytime a golfer, one of these top golfers that you see at the top of the board here, does that, I mean, they are just going to run away with the competition, the tournament. So what we saw Jon Rahm last week, obviously the books are still impressed by that, not too worried about the COVID case that he had to deal with, because he's still the favorite on the golf tournament, 10-1. Next closest 17-1 is Dustin Johnson. So Jon Rahm, being as short a favorite as he is, I actually show a little bit of value on Jon Rahm. So he's best available number you can get is plus 1050. I actually make him plus 1012 to win the golf tournament. So I'm going to have just a absolute sprinkle on Jon Rahm, really only to win like a half unit. But out of all the top of the board, he is somebody that I show value in. Going down the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 golfers at the top of the board, actually guys I don't show any value in. So Dustin Johnson, Xander Schauffele, Bryson DeChambeau, Brooks Koepka, and Rory McIlroy. I make their number much higher, almost double for some of these guys than what their market win number is. So these are all guys that I'm not going to be on for the weekend. Just not a lot of value up there, especially whenever I'm projecting John Rahm to be such a heavy favorite, just like he is in the market. Scrolling down after that, that's whenever we start to hit a little stretch here where we do see some value. So outside of Justin Thomas, you can lump him in with the DJs, the Xanders, and the Brysons where I don't have value on him. Three guys that I do have value, actually four guys in a row. Jordan Spieth, Patrick Cantlay, Colin Morikawa, and Tony Finau. So Jordan Spieth, we've kind of done a complete 180 on Jordan Spieth. For the last 2 years, it's been a printing press against that guy. But over the last, at the beginning of 2021, I factor in long-term form whenever it comes to full tournament head-to-head. So he was absolutely picking on us. But we have finally caught up to him. We hit him. I mean, we've been hammering him in the outright market, or not the outright market, the full tournament head-to-head market, winning, sweeping tournaments with Jordan Spieth going up against all these top guys. We saw that at Congressional this year. We had an outright on him where I can't believe he didn't win. Almost went wire to wire, but Jason Kokrak just, lit it up on Sunday. But yeah, Jordan Spieth, a lot of people are going to be shying away from Jordan Spieth this week. And I think that's why we're getting a good number. And rightfully so. The reason you're seeing Jordan Spieth, not as one of these top favorites and in the 20s range is because, he has been spraying his driver, and spraying your driver at Torrey Pines South is pretty much a death sentence whenever it comes to the U.S. Open, just because the rough is going to be so long. He's going to have some really difficult positions if he continues to spray his driver. But we've seen Jordan Spieth work his magic time and time again, where he might be 30 yards, 40 yards off the fairway, hits a magical shot to the green, drains a 35-foot putt. That's what this dude does, and that's what he's had to do since he hasn't really had the driving accuracy. But, the fairways are going to be tight this week, so a lot of guys are going to be playing out of the rough. He's not exactly a bomber off the tee, so that's going to hurt him a little bit. But, at the 23-1, we are showing a little bit of value there, so I will be on Jordan Spieth. Three more guys, Patrick Cantlay, Colin Morikawa, Tony Finau. Cantlay obviously coming off that asterisk win at the Memorial, we'll call it. This guy is, we talked about last episode, he's one of the least exciting golfers on tour, but he's also one of the strongest golfers on tour. You could almost lock him in for a top 20 here. But we do show a little bit of value on him, 25-1. I make him closer to 22-1 for the tournament. Colin Morikawa, PGA Championship winner from last year, on a course where you're gonna have longer second shots, especially whenever the course is playing 6,500 yards. Colin Morikawa is the best when it comes to long irons. So if he can find a few fairways this week and he can get his putter going, this is a guy who you could see run away with it like we saw Bryson a few years ago. Next one is Tony Finau. Everybody, obviously everybody's talking about how Bombers are going to have an advantage this week. And that's usually the case whenever it comes to U.S. Opens, because if you think about it, sure, hitting the fairways is important, but the fairways are so thin anyway. So the Bombers have an advantage because if you hit one 325, 330 yards in the rough as well, you might be hitting a 9-iron in whenever most are hitting a 6 or 7-iron in. So having that lower lofted club closer to the green out of the rough is a huge advantage. And that's why we saw Bryson he just bombed every single tee shot at the beginning of this year, last U.S. Open, and just, was hitting wedges in, and while other guys were hitting 7-irons in, and that was the distance. He was able to hold those greens, and helps that Bryson's one of the best putters on tour. So Tony Finau could definitely do that. A lot of people say Tony Finau's longer than Bryson DeChambeau if he really wanted to be. So if he can stick some greens this week, get the putter rolling, Tony Finau is always a threat to contend at these major championships. Hasn't broken through yet, but it's just a matter of time that he will. I don't believe in any of the noise where, he doesn't perform well on Sundays. That's kind of been disproven if you really look at the numbers. He's just been in bad variance situations where other guys just go out and steal the tournament as opposed to him really losing. And not that there hasn't been times where he has lost the golf tournament himself, but a lot of guys have just went out and took it from him. So after that, we go on a run. Hovland, Reed. I do show some value on Scotty Scheffler as well. Tyrrell Hatton, no value. Hideki Matsuyama, the reigning Masters champion, no value. So we'll switch it up. We'll sort it by the guys that we do have value on. So as I mentioned, we're gonna have Morikawa, we're gonna have Finau, we're gonna have a sprinkle on Rahm, we're gonna have some on Spieth. Some of the biggest values I have is Chuck Hoffman to win. He's 100-1 currently. I make him actually closer to 40-1 to win this golf tournament. Next biggest behind that, Colin Morikawa. Another guy is Paul Casey, Jason Kokrak. I mean, I believe this guy has not missed a cut this week, and he again is just a typical guy that you would see have success at a golf tournament like this. We saw what he did at Congressional, 2 wins on the year already. Would not be surprised to see him break through here soon to win a major championship. And I think that's what, I mean, there's a chance that we see that. I think 70-1 is way too long of a number on Jason Kokrak. I've seen from a few different places that he's had some love in the outright markets, but 70-1, I think that's pretty disrespectful for a guy that hasn't missed a cut and has 2 wins on the year so far. Speaking of a guy that has 2 wins on the year so far, Stuart Sink, again, 180-1. I'm not sure Stewie Sink is gonna win this golf tournament, but the value is 100% there. He is the opposite of what you'd expect to win here, but you know, I do factor in some recent form whenever I make these numbers, and he's playing just as good a golf as almost anybody outside of Jon Rahm right now. And then there's a few more guys as you'll go down. Like I said, we're on Spieth. Johnny Vegas just, I mean, almost won last week. He finished 1 back. So I think he is, in a good position to really make a push in this golf tournament in a major. We've seen what he can do with these kind of random events. Granted, the field wasn't very strong last week. We'll see what he can do in a tournament this week with a much stronger field. Obviously, the U.S. Open, one of the strongest strongest fields of the year. And then after that, we continue to go down. I mean, I don't want to run through all these guys, but we have Brian Harman, Kevin Streelman. Already told you about Scheffler, Cantlay. Louis Oosthuizen is a guy that I'm excited to be on this week. He always seems to rear his head at these major championships. So I mean, he's a big time player, and I think at 50-1, I make him actually a little bit closer to 40-1. So getting a good amount of value there. And the last guy I really want to touch on is Abe Answer. This is another guy that just always seems to be there during these major championships. Hasn't broken through yet, but there's no doubt in my mind that Abraham Answer will win a major championship one day. And it could very well be this week at the U.S. Open. So switching gears back to, we'll go to one and dones. So for one and dones, I mean, you're going to be using a stud here. You have a $12.5 million prize pool. So to me, looking at the market, the tournaments availability, looks like the chalk is going to be Dustin Johnson and Brooks Koepka for good reason. I mean, Dustin Johnson is molded to do well here at Torrey Pines South, but I got to be honest, I was doing a little bit deeper dive on Dustin Johnson, because I texted my buddy who we go in on one and done tournaments together, and I was like, DJ, right? Like that's the play. DJ or Brooks probably, but probably DJ. And I was doing a little bit deeper dive, and I mean, yeah, sure, he came off a 10th at the Palmetto, but again, that's a 10th at the Palmetto. I mean, there was just about nobody besides Brooks in the field last week. And he didn't really play that great. I mean, he had a a lot of putts down the stretch to make his number seem a little bit better than it was. But if you're going to look at, sure, he came in 13th at RBC Heritage, but if you're going to look at Dustin Johnson, the last four big tournaments and the last two majors, he's gone miscut at the PGA, miscut at the Masters. He came in 48th at the Players and 54th at the WGC Mexico. Now, sure, before that, I mean, he went on a tear where he was first, second, sixth, first, second, including, the PGA Championship, the U.S. Open, the Masters, and the Tour Championship. So, sure, yeah, I mean, guy was on an absolute another planet last year. But we're looking at this year. We're looking at right now. And he's missed a cut of his last two championships. So I'm afraid of Dustin Johnson. I mean, I can't knock anybody for actually taking him and playing him. But I'm scared to death of taking Dustin Johnson this week. Brooks Koepka, I mean, how can you go wrong taking Brooks Koepka and one done at a US Open? But at least in our league, he's 81% availability. So like that's why I think they're going to be the chalk for the week. And you might even see with that 80, I mean, twice as many people have Brooks available as DJ. So you might actually see Brooks leap into that number one spot in terms of ownership this week. So that's why little guy that I am probably going to take as my play. You might remember him, Bryson DeChambeau. He only won. Let's pull this up. Let's get exact numbers. So he only won the last U.S. Open by 6 strokes. People are forgetting this, I think. I mean, everybody and their brother is saying DJ is built to win at Torrey Pines. And while he is, if you're going to say DJ is, Bryson is also built to win at Torrey Pines. I mean, this is one of the longest hitters on tour. And like I said, what he did was he turned the last U.S. Open course into a modified pitch and putt where he was just bombing it out there, hitting a wedge and making his putts. It helps that he's one of the best putters on tour. And, we've seen DJ struggle at times with the flat stick, and I don't think we're going to get that with Bryson. Granted, these are POA greens. They're going to play a little differently. But that is going to be my pick for one and done. I think he is going to fly under the radar a little bit. And I mean, that's hard to imagine from the current reigning US Open champion. But I do think there's so much love out there for DJ and Brooks that we're going to get less ownership than we should on Bryson. And then you can go ahead and save DJ for one of the later tournaments this year, whenever the big money's at stake in the playoffs, because we saw what he did there. Hopefully, he gains a little bit more better recent form before then. But I think Bryson is the move this week for one and dones. But I mean, to be honest, I can't really fault you if you went DJ or Brooks. You can't really go wrong with either of the three, but just playing the game theory angle, that's why I'm like Bryson, because I think he is going to slide into that third spot as far as ownership. And, it doesn't really do you any good if, half your tournament's on Brooks and he wins. So you want to make up ground, especially in the position we're in. We're like maybe, we're in the top third and we need to get into the top sixth to get into the cash line. So that's why we need to make a little bit more of a contrarian move. And I think that's why Bryson is the answer there. Last storyline really heading into the US Open is the lefty Grand Slam. Is Phil Mickelson gonna get it done? And I don't want to bash Phil Mickelson. That's not what this is about. But I don't think it's gonna happen. I don't think many people think it's gonna happen, but they also didn't think he'd win the PGA Championship either. But he caught lightning at a bottle at the PGA Championship this year. I would not expect it again this year, but he is going for the career Grand Slam. He's been the runner-up at this golf tournament 6 different times. But I mean, that's not the same Phil. I mean, he's not the same Phil relative to the field that he was during those 6 runner-up championships. If I'm gonna stake my claim to one guy, it's gonna be Jon Rahm to get this done this week. That's not really go out on a limb by any stretch of the imagination. But a lot of people are going to be afraid of him with the COVID, and I understand that. But from everything I saw, he was asymptomatic. Was cleared as of Tuesday to go out play practice rounds. And again, we saw what he was doing at the Memorial. I think it'd be fitting for him to come back and finish a job here and earn his first major championship with it. So that'll do it for this episode of the T Sheet. Hope you enjoyed it. Definitely like us on Twitter, sub to the YouTube channel, follow us, all that good stuff. Join our Discord. A lot of good conversation going on there. We're going to be running a DK contest for the US Open this week. So be sure to join it. If you have any questions, let me know. If not, we'll talk to you again next week, and have a good one.